Seoul, Gangnam-gu. The Azure Casino. 11:47 p.m. on a Saturday. The most unsettling thing about Shin Jae-won was not his reputation. It was his stillness. In a world of fidgeting gamblers, sweating dealers, and women who laughed too loud to hide their fear, Jae-won sat like a statue. He occupied the VIP balcony overlooking the main floor, a leather armchair angled toward the baccarat tables, a glass of room-temperature barley water untouched beside him. His hands rested on the armrests. His amber eyes moved slowly, methodically, cataloging everything. He wore a midnight blue suit with a subtle satin stripe, no tie, the top two buttons of his white shirt undone. His shoes were black Oxfords, polished to a mirror shine. A silver signet ring glinted on his left pinky. For 15 years, Jae-won had run the Azure. It was his jewel, his fortress, his cage. He knew every employee's name, every high roller's tell, every blind spot in the camera system. He also knew that he was bored out of his fucking mind. Not the restless boredom of a man who needed a new car or a vacation. No, this was deeper. A bone-deep emptiness that had settled into him around age 30 and never left. Women threw themselves at him constantly. Models, actresses, the daughters of rival bosses. They wore silk and diamonds and desperate hope. They touched his arm. They laughed at things that weren't funny. They all blurred together into a single, forgettable face. Jae-won had never been intrigued. Not once. Until she walked onto the main floor. He didn't see her at first. He heard her. A burst of laughter. Loud, unapologetic, the kind of laugh that came from the belly and didn't care who heard it. Then a voice, clear and sharp as a cracked bell. "Sweetheart, if you're gonna count cards, at least pretend to look at the dealer. She has feelings, you know?" Jae-won's head turned. Down on the main floor, a woman was leaning against a craps table, one elbow propped on the rail, her body loose and easy. She wore a deep plum-colored satin slip dress that ended mid-thigh, with thin straps and a neckline that dipped into a soft V. Over it, she'd thrown an oversized cream-colored cardigan, the sleeves pushed up to her elbows. Her feet were in chunky silver platform sandals that added 3 inches to her already tall frame. Her hair, thick, black, glossy, fell in waves past her shoulders. She was black, no mixed. Her skin was a warm, rich brown with golden undertones, like honey held up to sunlight. Her features were broad and generous. Full lips, wide-set dark eyes, a nose with a slight bump on the bridge. There was a small raised scar on her left earlobe, barely noticeable. When she smiled, which was often, her whole face transformed. Her eyes crinkled, her cheeks lifted, and something mischievous flickered behind her teeth. She was talking to a man at the craps table, a middle-aged Chinese businessman in an ill-fitting tuxedo. He was clearly losing. She was clearly enjoying it. Jae-won leaned forward. His head of security, a grizzled former intelligence officer named Mr. Kong, appeared at his elbow. "Sir, that woman is one of the new hostesses. Leilani Mayava. Started 3 weeks ago. She's been flagged for unconventional behavior." Define unconventional. She told a VIP from Dubai that his cologne smelled like a funeral home for pine trees. She taught a group of Japanese businessmen a drinking game involving chopsticks. And last Tuesday Kong paused, as if debating whether to continue. She danced on the bar in the high-limit lounge. Not for tips. Just because a Beyoncé song came on. Jae-won's mouth didn't move, but something behind his amber eyes shifted. "Bring her up," he said. Kong blinked. "Sir, you heard me." 5 minutes later, Leilani Mayava stood in front of Shin Jae-won's balcony armchair. She did not bow. She did not look down. She placed her hands on her hips, the cardigan falling open to reveal the plum slip dress beneath, and stared at him like he was a mildly interesting exhibit at a museum. "So you're the ghost," she said. Jae-won said nothing. "Everyone whispers about you. Don't look at him. Don't talk to him. He's made of stone." She tilted her head, her dark eyes scanning his face. "But you're not stone, are you? Stones don't have scars through their eyebrows. Stones don't wear suits that cost more than my rent. Stones are boring. You're just quiet. Quiet," Jae-won repeated. His voice was low, rough at the edges, like gravel under tires. Quiet, she confirmed. And quiet is fine. I like quiet. What I don't like is being summoned like I'm a disobedient puppy. She crossed her arms. So, what do you want? Behind her, Mr. Kong made a small choking sound. Jae-won studied her. The way she stood, weight on one hip, chin lifted, absolutely no fear in her dark eyes. The way her fingers drummed against her bicep, impatient. The way her hair caught the low amber light of the balcony, turning the black waves into something almost blue. No one had spoken to him like this in a decade. No one had made him want to reply. Why did you dance on the bar? He asked. Lonnie blinked. That clearly was not the question she'd expected. Because the song was good. You were working. I was also alive. Those two things can happen at the same time. Jae-won's left hand tapped once on the armrest. You're not afraid of me. Should I be? Most people are. Most people are afraid of their own shadows. She shrugged, the cardigan slipping off one shoulder. She didn't fix it. I'm from Detroit. I've seen scarier things than a handsome man in a nice suit. Handsome. She'd called him handsome. Jae-won felt something he hadn't felt in years. A crack in his own stillness. Just a hairline fracture. But it was there. You dance, he said. It wasn't a question. I move, she corrected. Dancing implies choreography. I just feel the music and let my body answer. Show me. Lonnie's eyebrows rose. Here? Now? In these shoes? Jae-won nodded once. She laughed. That same loud, belly-deep laugh from earlier. You're weird. I like that. She kicked off her silver platform sandals. Her bare feet were wide. The nails painted a dark berry color. She rolled her shoulders, shook out her arms, and then, the song changed. Down on the main floor, the casino's sound system shifted into something slower, heavier. A trap beat with a bass line that vibrated up through the floorboards. Lonnie's eyes half closed. And then she moved. The dance. Not like the first time. Not a gentle sway or a casual groove. This was different. This was performance. This was weapon. Lonnie's hips began to roll. Slow, deliberate, each rotation a sentence. Her waist dipped and swayed, the plum satin of her dress clinging to the curve of her lower back. Her thighs, strong and thick, braced as she lowered herself into a shallow squat, then rose, then lowered again, each movement synced to the base. Her hands traced up her sides, over her ribs, through her hair. Her head fell back. Her mouth opened slightly. She was twerking, but not the aggressive, club-ready version. This was hypnotic, controlled, dangerous. Her hips moved in figure eights, then in circles, then in sharp, staccato pops that seemed to defy anatomy. Her waist, God, her waist, curved and straightened, like a snake charmed by its own reflection. The few employees on the balcony froze. Mr. Kong turned his back, face red. Jae-won did not look away. His pulse, which had been steady at 52 beats per minute for as long as he could remember, jumped to 68. Lonnie dropped lower. Her hips swayed dangerously close to the floor, then rose with agonizing slowness. Her spine undulated. A wave that started at her shoulders and rolled down to her tailbone. She made it look effortless. She made it look like breathing. But it wasn't effortless. Jae-won could see the tension in her thighs, the sweat beginning to bead on her forehead, the way her chest rose and fell faster. She was giving everything, and she was giving it to him. Her hips swayed left, right, right. Her waist moved like water, like silk, like something that had no business being in a casino full of desperate gamblers and tired hostesses. Her dark eyes found his and held. She wasn't dancing for him. She was dancing at him. A challenge. A dare. You wanted to see? Then see. The song built to a crescendo. Lonnie's movements became faster, sharper. Her hips popping to the beat, her thighs tensing and releasing, her hands sliding down her body, over her hips, down her thighs. She bit her lower lip. Her eyes never left his. And then the drop. The bass hit. Lonnie's body responded like it was made for this moment. Her hips snapped. Her waist curved. Her hair flew. She was no longer a woman dancing. She was a force of nature, a storm contained in brown skin and a plum satin dress, and Jae-won realized he had stopped breathing. The song faded. Lonnie straightened, smoothing her dress with one hand. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. A single bead of sweat traced down her temple, along her jaw, disappearing into the hollow of her throat. She smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was sharp, knowing, and utterly unafraid. Satisfied? She asked. Jae-won's jaw tightened. His hands, still resting on the armrests, had curled into fists without his permission. No, he said quietly. Lonnie's smile widened. Good, because I wasn't dancing for you anyway. She bent down, slowly, deliberately, giving him an unobstructed view of the way the plum dress stretched across her backside, picked up her silver platform sandals, and walked barefoot toward the elevator. Her hips still swayed, but casually now like an afterthought. At the door, she paused, looked back over her shoulder. Her dark eyes glittered. You should smile more, Mr. Shin. It wouldn't kill you. The elevator doors closed. Jae-won sat in the silence for a full minute. Then he picked up his untouched glass of barley water and drank it in one long swallow. His hand was steady. His heart was not. Kong, he said. Sir, find out everything about her. Where she lives, who she talks to, what she eats for breakfast, what music she listens to, what she dreams about. Kong hesitated. Sir, is that? I don't care if it's appropriate. Jae-won set the glass down with a soft clink. I want to know why I can't stop thinking about the way her hips moved. That night, Shin Jae-won did not sleep. He lay in his minimalist penthouse. All gray concrete, black leather, and cold steel, and stared at the ceiling. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. The roll of her hips, the arch of her back, the way her waist curved and straightened, the way she'd looked at him like he was nothing special. No one had ever looked at him like he was nothing special. He wanted her to look at him again, and that terrified him more than any rival faction ever had. 3 days later, the Azure Casino, VIP lounge. Lonnie was working the floor, her actual job, not the performance art she'd accidentally given the boss. She wore a burnt orange wrap dress today, the fabric soft and flowing, tied at her waist with a wide brown leather belt. Her sandals were flat, because her feet were still recovering from the platforms. Her hair was in a high ponytail that swung when she walked. Her earrings were large brass rings. Her only other jewelry was a thin gold chain with a small pawa shell pendant, a gift from her Samoan grandfather. She was refilling a high roller's whiskey glass when she felt it. That prickle on the back of her neck. The one that said, "Someone is watching." She turned. Shin Jae-won stood 20 feet away, alone, his hands clasped behind his back. He wore a charcoal suit tonight, the jacket unbuttoned over a black turtleneck. No tie, no jewelry except the silver signet ring. His amber eyes were fixed on her face. He did not smile. He never smiled. But something in his posture had changed. He was leaning slightly forward, like a man fighting the urge to close distance. Lonnie finished pouring the whiskey, set down the bottle and walked toward him. She didn't hurry. She didn't slow down. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough to smell him. Cedar, cold air, and something metallic, like coins. You again, she said. Stalking me now or just admiring the view? You called me handsome, he said. I call many things handsome. Sunsets, old buildings, that suit. She gestured at his charcoal jacket. It's a nice suit. My suits are always nice. Modest, too. I'm not modest. I'm honest. Lonnie laughed. Okay, I'll give you that. She crossed her arms, the burnt orange fabric draping over her wrists. So, you had your security team investigate me. Found out I'm from Detroit. Found out my grandfather is Samoan. Found out I moved here 2 years ago because I wanted to be somewhere that wasn't home. Jae-won's eyes narrowed. How do you know Mr. Kong is a terrible liar. He asked my coworker about my preferred breakfast beverage yesterday. Very subtle. A pause. Then, was that a twitch at the corner of his mouth? You're impossible, he said. I prefer unforgettable. She uncrossed her arms, planted her hands on her hips. So, what do you really want, Mr. Shin? Because I don't think you came all the way down from your balcony to discuss my breakfast habits. Jae-won was silent for a long moment. His amber eyes traveled over her face, her dark eyes, her full lips, the small keloid scar on her earlobe. Then he spoke. I want to know why you're not afraid of me. Answered that. I'm from Detroit. That's not an answer. Lonnie sighed. She uncrossed her arms, stepped closer. Close enough that he could probably count her eyelashes. Fine. Here's the real answer. She leaned in, her breath ghosting across his jaw. I've been afraid my whole life. Of my mother dying. Of my grandfather getting deported. Of not being enough, smart enough, pretty enough, black enough for some people and too black for others. I've been so full of fear that I couldn't breathe. She pulled back, met his eyes. And then one day, I decided, fuck it. Fear is a cage. And I'm not an animal. Jae-won's throat moved. A swallow. You're reckless, he said. I prefer free. Reckless gets people killed. Control gets people bored. She smiled, that sharp, knowing smile from the first night. Which one are you, Mr. Shin? Reckless or controlled? He didn't answer, but his right hand, the one without the ring, reached out. Slowly, giving her time to move away. She didn't. His fingers touched her wrist. Just the barest contact. His skin was cool, smooth with calluses on the palm. He traced the inside of her wrist, where her pulse jumped. It's fast, he said quietly. Yours isn't. I've had years of practice. Practicing what? Not feeling. His eyes flickered. Something raw passed through them. There and gone, like lightning in a distant storm. You have no idea what I feel, he said. Then show me. The air between them crackled. The casino sounds, slot machines, laughter, clinking glasses, faded into background noise. It was just them. Just his hand on her wrist. Just her dark eyes and his amber ones. Then Jae-won stepped back. Tomorrow, he said. 7 p.m. There's a restaurant in Myeongdong. I'll send a car. A date. A conversation. Lonnie laughed. You're asking me out. That's adorable. I'm not asking. I'm informing. And if I say no? He tilted his head. The scar through his eyebrow caught the light. You won't. He walked away. Didn't look back. Lonnie watched him go, her heart hammering. She pressed her fingers to her wrist. The spot he'd touched. Still felt cool. Damn, she whispered to herself. I'm in trouble. The restaurant was called Mokran. It was not a place that existed on any public map. Hidden behind an unmarked door in a Myeongdong alley, it had only 6 tables, all private, all separated by silk screens hand-painted with cranes in flight. The walls were dark wood, polished to a deep gleam. The lighting was low and golden, casting everything in a warm, intimate glow. There was no menu. The chef decided what you ate and you thanked him for it. Jae-won was already seated when Lonnie arrived. He stood as she entered, a gesture so old-fashioned that she nearly laughed. He wore a deep burgundy suit tonight, the jacket tailored to his broad shoulders, with a black silk shirt underneath. His hair was pushed back, a few strands falling over his forehead. He looked like a painting, an expensive, slightly menacing painting. Lonnie had worn a cream-colored cashmere sweater dress that fell to her knees, with a wide brown leather belt at her waist. Her hair was loose, falling in waves past her shoulders. Her boots were taupe suede, block-heeled, with a subtle Western-style stitching. Her only jewelry was the thin gold chain with the pawa shell pendant, her grandfather's gift, and small gold hoop earrings. She smiled as she approached the table. You clean up nice. So do you. A waiter appeared, no words, just a bow and a pour of barley tea, then disappeared behind the silk screens. Lonnie picked up her cup, inhaling the earthy scent. So, this conversation, what are we discussing? The weather? The stock market? The existential dread of turning 30? Jae-won studied her for a long moment. His amber eyes moved slowly over her face, her hair, the way she held her cup. Both hands wrapped around it, like she was warming them. Why did you come to Seoul? He asked. Same reason everyone comes to Seoul. I wanted to be somewhere that wasn't home. And home is Detroit, but also not Detroit. She set down the cup, tracing the rim with her finger. My mother was black, from the west side. My father was Samoan. He died before I was born. Car accident. So I was raised by my mother until I was 12, then by my grandfather after she passed. Cancer. Fast. Ugly. J1 said nothing, but his eyes didn't leave her face. My grandfather is Samoan. Full. He moved to Detroit in the 80s to work in auto manufacturing. He's the one who taught me how to dance. Not formally, just in the living room to old reggae and Samoan folk songs. He said, Lonnie, your body is a gift. Don't lock it in a box. And your body is not locked. She smiled. A real smile, soft at the edges. No, it's not. The food came. Course after course. Chilled perilla oil noodles, slippery and cold, with a hint of sesame. Grilled eel with a sweet soy glaze, the skin crackling. Beef tartare with pear, the meat almost melting on her tongue. A silky tofu stew that made Lonnie close her eyes in pleasure. They ate in silence. Not an awkward silence. A comfortable one. Between courses, J1 spoke. I killed my first man when I was 17. Lonnie's chopsticks paused. She looked up. He was a debt collector. He'd beaten my father's younger uncle to death. I found him in a karaoke bar in Hongdae. I had a broken bottle and a lot of rage. You were a child. I was a weapon. He set down his own chopsticks. My father raised me to be silent, efficient, and unfeeling. He succeeded. I am all those things. And yet here you are, having dinner with a woman who dances on bars and calls you weird. His mouth twitched. Not a smile, but close. Here I am. Why? Because, he said slowly, as if the words were being pulled from somewhere deep. When you danced that first night, not the bar, the one in front of me, I forgot where I was. I forgot who I was. For 7 seconds, I was just a man watching a woman move. Lonnie's breath caught. And I hated it, he continued. I hated not being in control. I hated that you looked at me like I was ordinary. I hated that I couldn't stop thinking about your hips. My hips? She repeated, amused. Your hips. Your waist. The way your hair fell over your shoulder. The way you said handsome like it was a minor detail. He leaned forward, his amber eyes burning. I have not slept properly in 3 weeks because of you. Lonnie set down her chopsticks. She leaned forward too, until there were only inches between them. Good, she said, because I haven't stopped thinking about your hands. My hands. The way they stayed so still on the armrest. Like you were physically holding yourself back from touching me. She reached out, slowly, and placed her palm over his right hand. His skin was cool. His fingers curled, almost involuntarily, around hers. You're not stoned, J1. You're just scared. His jaw tightened. I am not scared of anything. You're scared of feeling something you can't control. She squeezed his hand. Guess what? Neither can I. And I'm still here. The silence stretched. The candles flickered. Then J1 turned his hand over, laced his fingers through hers, and held on. One more thing, he said quietly. What? If you ever dance like that in front of another man, I will have him removed from the country. Lonnie burst out laughing, loud, unapologetic, filling the small room. Possessive, she said. I like it. You like everything about me that you shouldn't. Probably. She lifted their joined hands and pressed a kiss to his knuckles. But I'm reckless, remember? For the first time in 15 years, Shin J1 smiled. It was small, barely a curve of his thin lips, but it was real. And Lonnie Mayava, who had never been afraid of anything, felt her heart crack open just a little. 3 weeks later, J1's penthouse. 2 a.m. The problem with falling for a man like Shin J1 was that his enemies fell too, just in the opposite direction. Started small. A tire slashed on Lonnie's car. A threatening note taped to her apartment door, written in crude English. Stay away from him or else. A man following her home from the casino, disappearing when she turned around. Lonnie didn't tell J1. She was reckless, not stupid. She knew that telling him would trigger a war. And wars got people killed. But Jae-won had eyes everywhere. One night, after a late shift at the Azure, Lonnie walked out to the parking garage and found her car surrounded by 4 men in black jackets. Korean, late 20s, empty eyes. The leader stepped forward. He had a snake tattoo curling up his neck. "You're the American." Lonnie kept her hands visible, her voice calm. "I'm from Detroit. That's different. You need to leave Seoul. Tonight. And if I don't?" The man smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Then we help you leave." He reached for her arm. Lonnie moved before she could think. Her grandfather had taught her a few things, not fighting exactly but redirection. She twisted, slipped his grip, and drove her knee into his stomach. He doubled over. She grabbed his hair, yanked his head down, and brought her elbow across the back of his neck. He collapsed. The other 3 stared. Then they rushed her. Lonnie got one more hit in. A punch to a nose, satisfying crunch, before they grabbed her arms, pinned her against the cold concrete pillar. The leader was getting up, face purple with rage. "That was a mistake," he spat. "Probably," Lonnie agreed. But it felt good. Car engine roared. Not her car. A black sedan, tires screeching, barreling into the parking garage. It slammed to a stop. 4 men in gray suits spilled out. J1's security team, weapons drawn but not raised. And behind them, walking slowly, hands in his pockets, face utterly expressionless, was Shin Jae-won. He wore a black cashmere coat over a gray suit. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been woken up. His amber eyes were cold, colder than Lonnie had ever seen them. He looked at the men holding Lonnie. He looked at the leader, still clutching his stomach. Then he looked at Lonnie. "Are you hurt?" "Not really. They have terrible form." Jae-won nodded. Then he turned to the leader. "Who sent you?" The leader spat on the ground. "Go to hell." Jae-won's hand moved. Fast. Too fast to track. He grabbed the leader's throat and slammed him against the concrete pillar. The man's feet left the ground. "Last chance," Jae-won said, his voice soft as silk. "Who?" The man's face went from red to purple. He gasped something. A name, a faction, Lonnie couldn't hear. Jae-won released him. The man crumpled. "Take them to the warehouse," Jae-won told his security team. "I'll deal with them later." Then he walked to Lonnie. His hands cupped her face, tilting it up to the light. His amber eyes scanned her skin, her neck, her arms. "You're bleeding," he said. "I am." She looked down. There was a cut on her forearm. She hadn't even felt it. A thin line of red against her brown skin. "Oh, that's nothing." "It's not nothing." His voice was tight, controlled, but his hands were shaking. "You could have been killed." "I wasn't. Because you got lucky." "I got lucky because I'm scrappy." She smiled, even though her heart was pounding. "Also because you showed up. So thanks for that." Jae-won closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. "I can't lose you," he said. "I have never said those words to anyone. I have never meant them. But I can't." She kissed him. Not softly, not gently. A hard, desperate kiss. Her fingers digging into his shoulders, his hands sliding into her hair. He tasted like barley tea and something darker, something that had been locked away for too long. When they broke apart, both gasping, he pressed his forehead to hers. "You're moving in with me," he said. "Am I?" "Yes. Tonight. Your apartment isn't safe." "My apartment isn't safe because of you." "Exactly." He pulled back, his jaw set. "So you stay with me until I fix this. And then you stay because I don't want you to leave." Lonnie studied his face. The scar through his eyebrow. The faint lines around his eyes. The way his mouth was pressed into a thin, determined line. "You're asking me to live with you. I'm informing you." She laughed. That loud, unapologetic laugh. "You're impossible. And you're bleeding on my parking garage floor. Let's go." He put his arm around her shoulders and walked her to his car. She leaned into him, her head against his chest, listening to his heart. It was beating fast. For her. 2 months later. Jae-won's penthouse. 3:17 a.m. The penthouse was nothing like she expected. She'd imagined cold marble, sharp edges, the minimalist tomb of a man who didn't believe in comfort. Instead, Jaewon's home was warm, dark wood floors, overstuffed leather couches in deep chestnut, a wall of books, real books, with cracked spines and dog-eared pages, everything from Russian literature to botanical guides, a kitchen with copper pots hanging from a rack, a vase of fresh eucalyptus on the island, a balcony filled with potted herbs, basil, mint, rosemary, even a small chili plant. It's not what I pictured, she admitted the first night, standing in the doorway, still wearing her cream cashmere dress with a fresh bandage on her arm. What did you picture? A mausoleum. He almost smiled. My mother designed it. Before she died. Your mother? Cancer. When I was 22. He walked to the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of water. She was the only person who ever made me laugh. After she passed, I stopped trying. Lonnie took the glass, their fingers brushing. You laughed with me. At the restaurant. I did. It didn't kill you. No. He looked at her. Really looked, like he was seeing her for the first time. It didn't. She moved into his guest bedroom that night. But at 2 a.m., she heard him pacing in the hallway. She opened her door. He stood there, barefoot, in a gray t-shirt and black sweatpants, his hair disheveled, falling over his forehead. Without the suits, without the armor, he looked younger, more human. The scar through his eyebrow was more visible in the low light. Can't sleep? She asked. Never could. Come here. She pulled him into her room, pushed him onto the bed, and climbed in beside him. Not for sex. For warmth. She wrapped her arms around his chest, pressed her face into his shoulder. He was stiff at first and used to being touched, to being held. Then slowly, his arm came around her, his hand resting on her back. You're warm, he said, surprised. Black women run hot. It's a fact. He laughed. A real laugh, low and rusty, like a machine starting up after years of disuse. Stay, he said. I'm already here. Forever. She lifted her head, looked into his amber eyes. Ask me nicely. He swallowed. Please. Lonnie smiled. Soft, genuine, her walls finally down. Okay, she said. Forever. The weeks that followed were a slow unraveling. Jaewon declared war on the faction that had threatened Lonnie. Not loudly, he never did anything loudly, but quietly, efficiently, with the precision of a surgeon. Within a month, their gambling dens were shuttered, their leaders were in hiding, and their muscle had either flipped or fled. Lonnie didn't ask for details. She didn't need to. She saw the aftermath in the tightness of Jaewon's jaw, the way he washed his hands too thoroughly when he came home, the small cut on his knuckle that he didn't explain. But he also changed. He started eating breakfast with her instead of alone in his study. He learned that she hated mushrooms with a violent passion, that she could name every constellation visible from Seoul's light-polluted sky, that she cried during animated movies without fail. She learned things about him, too. He had a younger sister he hadn't spoken to in 6 years. She'd married a man from a rival faction, and Jaewon had cut her off completely. The scar on his eyebrow was from a childhood fall, not a fight. He played piano, badly, but he played every Sunday morning the same Chopin nocturne, because his mother had loved it. You're not a monster, Lonnie said one night. They were on the balcony, wrapped in blankets against the November chill. She was drinking ginger tea. He had barley water. I am, he said calmly. I just haven't shown you the parts that would make you run. Try me. He looked at her for a long time. Then he told her about the man in Busan, the debt collector who'd threatened his uncle, the broken bottle, the way the blood had looked black in the fluorescent light of the karaoke bar. Lonnie's face didn't change. He was going to kill your uncle, she said. Yes. Then you did what you had to do. Jaewon's glass paused halfway to his lips. You're not supposed to understand. I'm from Detroit, she said simply. I've seen worse on the evening news. Something cracked in his chest. Something that had been frozen since his mother's body in the hydrangeas. That night, after she went to bed, he stood outside her door again. He didn't knock. He didn't speak. but he pressed his forehead to the wood and stayed there for 20 minutes, breathing the same air. Lonnie, on the other side, did the same. 3 months in, the night everything broke open. J1 came home at 2 a.m. with blood on his cuff. Not his. A rival faction had tried to move into his territory, a group of young Russians with more ambition than sense. He'd handled it, but the adrenaline was still singing in his veins, and his hands were shaking, and all he could think about was her. He found Lonnie in the living room. She was wearing a silk robe the color of dried blood, deep burgundy, belted at her waist, slipping off one shoulder. Her hair was wet loose, falling in dark waves down her back. She'd just showered. The scent of her soap, jasmine and something earthy, like rain on hot pavement, hit him like a physical blow. She was reading, paperback with a torn cover. She looked up when he entered, saw the blood, didn't flinch. "Whose?" she asked. "Doesn't matter." She set the book down. Rose walked toward him. Her bare feet made no sound on the dark wood floor. "You're shaking," she said. "I know." She stopped in front of him, reached out. Her fingers touched his blood-stained cuff. Not the skin, just the fabric. "Let me help you," she said. J1's control snapped. He grabbed her waist. Not hard but firm, his pale hands spanning the curve of her hips, and pulled her against him. She gasped. His other hand cupped the back of her neck, tangling in the damp ends of her hair. "I have wanted to do this for months," he said, his voice ragged. "Every single day. Every time you laughed. Every time you walked past me in that hallway. Every time you fell asleep on the couch, and I had to cover you with a blanket, because you looked so fucking peaceful I couldn't bear to wake you." Lonnie's hands came up to his chest, not pushing, pressing, feeling the thundering of his heart. "So why didn't you?" she breathed. "Because I knew," he said, "that once I started, I would never stop." He kissed her. It was not gentle. It was not the careful, measured kiss of a man in control. It was desperate, hungry, months of silence exploding into contact. His mouth slanted over hers, and she opened for him immediately, a soft, broken sound escaping her throat. He tasted like barley tea and copper. She tasted like ginger and warmth. His hands mapped her back, her ribs, the dip of her waist. She pulled his shirt from his trousers, slid her palms up his stomach, felt the ridges of scar tissue and muscle. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, his forehead pressed to hers. "Leilani," he said, her name strange and beautiful in his mouth. "If we do this, there is no going back. You will be mine, and mine is a dangerous place to be." She looked into his amber eyes, saw the monster, yes, but also the boy who'd found his mother in the garden, the man who'd pulled 3 people from a fire, the creature who'd never been loved without conditions. "I've been in danger since I walked into your casino," she said. "At least now I get to choose." He kissed her again, slower this time. "Promise." And in the penthouse above Seoul, with the city lights flickering and the rain beginning to fall, Shin Jae-won finally stopped being silent. 6 months later, Jae-won's penthouse. New Year's Eve. The war was over. Jae-won had ended it the way he ended everything. Quietly, efficiently, without mercy. The faction that had threatened Lonnie no longer existed. Their leader was in a hospital in Busan with 2 broken legs and a lifetime of nightmares. Jae-won's reputation, already fearsome, had become legendary. But something else had changed. He smiled now, not often, but when Lonnie walked into a room, his mouth curved, just slightly, like a reflex he couldn't control. Tonight, she'd outdone herself. The penthouse was decorated with fairy lights and paper lanterns in deep red and gold. A playlist of Lonnie's favorite songs, old-school reggae, Samoan folk, 90s R&B, played softly from the speakers. The balcony doors were open, letting in the cold night air and the distant sound of fireworks. Lonnie stood by the window, her back to the room. She wore a dress the color of a stormy sea, a deep teal silk slip with a cowl neck and a back that dipped to her waist. The fabric pooled around her ankles, then slit open to mid-thigh when she walked. Her hair was in a high ponytail, wrapped with a gold cord. Her earrings were long, dangling gold leaves. Her sandals were strappy, silver, with a 4-inch heel. Her skin glowed in the fairy lights. She was looking out at the city, her profile illuminated. Jae-won stood in the doorway, frozen. He wore a deep emerald silk shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, and black trousers. His hair was pushed back, damp from a shower. The scar through his eyebrow was pale in the soft light. No suit, no armor, just him. "You're staring again," she said without turning around. "I'm admiring. That's a new word for you. I'm learning." He walked toward her, his bare feet silent on the wood floor. He stopped behind her. His hands settled on her waist. "Turn around," he said. She turned. Her dark eyes met his amber ones. Her full lips curved into a smile. "Happy New Year, Jae-won." "Happy New Year, Lonnie." He kissed her. Slow, deep. His hands slid up her back, tracing the bare skin exposed by the dress's low cut. She sighed into his mouth, her fingers tangling in his hair. When they broke apart, fireworks exploded outside, gold and red and blue, reflected in the windows. "I have something for you," he said. "A present? You shouldn't have." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box. Lonnie's breath caught. "Jae-won, open it." She did. Inside was not a ring. It was a key. Old-fashioned, brass, with a red silk ribbon tied around it. "What is this?" "A house, in Jeju Island. On the beach." He swallowed, his composure cracking. "My mother used to take me there when I was a child. Before everything. Before the blood and the silence. I bought it last month. I want to go there with you. Not as a getaway. As a home." Lonnie stared at the key, then at him. "You want to retire? You? The stone. I want to wake up next to you every morning and watch the sun rise over the ocean. I want to learn how to cook the food you like. I want to be bad at dancing and not care." He cupped her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "I want to be a person, Lonnie, not a weapon. And I can only do that with you." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. "You're supposed to be the one who doesn't feel," she whispered. "I was wrong." She kissed him hard, fierce, tasting salt and champagne and forever. "Take me to Jeju," she said. "Tonight. Tomorrow. Tonight. I want to dance." She pulled him to the center of the room, wrapped her arms around his neck, and began to move. He was stiff at first, he'd never learned, never been taught. But she guided him, her hips swaying slowly, her waist dipping and rising. "You're thinking too much," she murmured. "I'm always thinking." "Stop." He closed his eyes, let his body follow hers. And for the first time in his life, Shin Jae-won danced. Not well, but freely. Lonnie laughed, that loud, unapologetic laugh, and spun out of his arms, then back in. Her teal dress swirled. Her hair swung. Her dark eyes glittered with tears and joy. "You're beautiful," he said. "I know. I love you." She stopped moving. The music played on. Fireworks burst outside. "What did you say?" she asked. Jae-won's jaw tightened. His hands, still on her waist, trembled. "I said I love you." His voice cracked, the first time she'd ever heard it crack. "I have never said those words to anyone. Not my father. Not my mother. Not any woman. Only you." Lonnie's tears fell faster. "You picked the right one," she said. "I know." She kissed him again. Then she pulled back, grabbed his hand, and dragged him toward the balcony. "Where are we going?" "To watch the fireworks. And to make a plan." "What plan?" She turned to him, her face glowing in the golden light, her smile wide and reckless and free. "Jeju. Then Samoa. I want you to meet my grandfather. I want you to see the ocean where my father grew up. I want you to dance with me on the sand until you forget you were ever made of stone." Jae-won looked at her. This woman from Detroit with Samoan roots and a laugh that could shatter his silence, who had walked into his casino and his life and refused to be afraid. He pulled her close, pressed his lips to her forehead. "Whatever you want," he said. "Wherever you go. I'm there." The fireworks exploded. The city cheered. And in a penthouse above Seoul, a man who had never felt anything finally felt everything. 6 months later, Jeju Island, a beach house with blue shutters, Lonnie stood on the sand, barefoot, wearing a simple white linen dress that billowed in the wind. Her hair was loose, wild, tangled by the salt air. The ocean stretched before her, gray-blue, endless, crashing against the shore in rhythmic pulses. Behind her, J1 sat on the porch, a cup of barley tea in his hand, watching her. He wore a loose white linen shirt and tan trousers, his feet bare, his hair longer now, curling at the nape of his neck. The scar through his eyebrow was barely visible in the golden afternoon light. He looked peaceful. Lonnie had never seen him look peaceful. She turned, smiled. "Dance with me," she called. "I don't dance. You do now." She walked toward him, pulled him to his feet, and led him to the wet sand. The waves lapped at their ankles. The sky was pale pink with the setting sun. She placed his hands on her waist, wrapped her arms around his neck, and they danced. No music, no audience, just the sound of the ocean and the beating of two hearts that had found each other against all odds. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," he replied. And for the first time in his life, Shin Jae-won smiled without restraint. The sun dipped below the horizon. The stars came out. And on a beach in Jeju, a reckless woman and a silent man finally stopped running. They simply were.
Hey loves, this story teaches us that love doesn't just soften people, it reveals who they truly are beneath fear, control, and survival. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly like and subscribe.